Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'amet. We praise you, Adonai, our God, creator of the universe, judge of truth. Jewish tradition says that we are supposed to be buried in a simple pine casket to show that in death we are all equal. So it's only fitting that Phyllis be buried in a simple pine casket. I've been a rabbi for 25 years and doing funerals for longer than that. 28 years, and doing funerals longer than that. I can honestly say that this is the first time that I've ever done a funeral for someone who had a casket that was bejeweled, bespeckled, and decorated. The family really wanted, y'all can come see it later. I mean, you'll be able to see it when she goes by later. The family took the time to reflect what Phyllis would have wanted, who Phyllis was, who was part of us and so full of so much more, who was full of fun and laughter, and herself always liked to be bejeweled, bespeckled, and bedressed, whatever that word is. So on the outside, there are some jewels. What are those things called? Strips. Jewel strips. On the inside are her initials in those strips as well, along with some pictures of the family, so that wherever she is, however she is, metaphorically or theologically, however you feel, she's as much at home as we could all hope she could be. And it's with that I begin. Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity and youth to age. From innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing. From foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again. From health to sickness and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith. From defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is the beginning and death the destination. But life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. Death has taken our beloved Phyllis. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation, in their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, be with them. For Phyllis's love that's united in life in which death cannot sever. For her companionship that was shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought joy and happiness and are now but precious remembrances. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. The words of the 23rd Psalm. Adonai roi lo exar bino deshi arbit seni al memanu chochin achaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'magled tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech begeit salmavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha mishantecha hema yanachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sororai dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi levaya. Achtov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai. As its words are familiar to many of us, if you care to join in. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance. A time to throw stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away, blessed be God's name. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us. Yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave and that there is strength in faith. With Job we say, Adonai natan, God you have given. You gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in Phyllis's life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. Blessed be God's name, now and forever. So, Karen, when I spoke to you the first time, Monday, Karen mentioned that Phyllis was a real powerhouse. You're all laughing. Good understatement. And you said that, Karen, that despite the fact she was 90, you thought that she was going to outlive everyone. I didn't know Phyllis very much at all. I'd met her at family events over the past decades. But what I took away from my meeting with John and with Randy and with Karen, first of all, I was exhausted. And there's different kinds of exhaustion, but the exhaustion I was taking in the energy of this woman that we're here to honor and the fullness of the life that she lived. I had to cut the conversation off after an hour and 20 minutes, and you all would have kept going, which says so much. Phyllis had a full life because of how full of life she was. And despite a history, given her history, not even despite, given a history of traumas and difficulties, which you're going to hear about from family members in a moment, the triumph of that she led the bejeweled life that she did. It's such an honor to have had the opportunity to get her through, to know her through you, even just a little bit. Now you're going to hear from the family about all aspects of her, but I know there's two things that are going to be mentioned multiple times, so I'm just going to say them both first to get it, so I can say I said it first. The first is that if you knew Phyllis, you knew that very early on she was a member of Mensa. So I just want y'all to know that she was a member of Mensa. And equally, I want you to know, which is a given, how much she loved all of you. And how much what she was a reflection of all of you as you are of her. Which is why it's more appropriate that you hear from them, her family, than from me. So I'm going to call up first John, and then Steve, and then Madeline, and then Ben, Emma, and Harry are going to come up together. John?
just in case it gets bad, I got paper towels too. All right. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Rabbi Bruce. I don't know how the weather was for everybody else over here, but I woke up this morning. It was ominous, cloudy, gloomy, scary winds blowing tree branches into our bedroom window. Excuse me. I thought to myself, oh, great. Mom just got to the pearly gates, and she's already telling God how to run things. No worry. By the end of the week, she'll be fine. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to my family, to my friends, and more often than not, a combination of the two. And I appreciate you being here today, and also the sweet condolence texts. Interestingly, as Bruce said, the words used to describe my mom had a kind of a similar tone everybody used. Strong, a force, powerhouse, matriarch. Don't get me wrong, she was all that. But she had a sweet, soft, nurturing side, believe it or not, as can be verified by her children, her grandchildren, maybe not children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, etc. But on her behalf, the troublemakers that were her children used to complain she was overly strict and even nicknamed her Attila. That was from you. Dinner at 6 o'clock meant dinner at 6 o'clock, not 6:01. We didn't want to miss the beginning of the Dick Van Dyke Show when he fell over the ottoman. It was on every night at 6 on Channel 9. We watched it while eating dinner. But looking back on it, she wasn't overly strict at all. She was appropriately disciplining her children, who were not traditional rule followers, to help make sure they did not grow up into entitled little monsters. I'm not saying she was successful in that venture, but she gave it the good old college try. So today, instead of a boring eulogy, I thought it might be better to provide you with Phyllis fun facts. I like saying that, Phyllis fun facts. Fact number 1, I'm not allowed to call her Phyllis. If she ever heard me saying her name, even on a phone call, even calling in a prescription, she'd correct me. To you, my name's Mom. So for the rest of this speech, she would be referenced appropriately. Fact number 2, my family hates my long speeches, but my mom liked them. So today, she trumps you. And by that, I mean the bridge kind of Trump that she liked, the good kind, not the insane, autocratic, crazy one. Fact number 2.5, my mom hated Trump. Fact number 3, this might surprise some of you, she was very, very opinionated. If she thought you were being an idiot, she would not hesitate to point that out. But I see where she was coming from. If you're wrong about something, and I correct you, I'm helping you. I get that. Karen doesn't get that. But I get that. You're welcome. My mother was really good, as I mentioned, at bridge. She got tons of master points, finishing at the top of major tournaments on a regular basis. Unfortunately, you can't actually redeem those master points for anything. My mother was a really good painter, and that's probably where Emma got that from. My mother was a really bad singer, and that's probably where I got that from. When we were young on a car ride somewhere and the radio came on, she would start singing along, and her 3 rotten kids, actually her 2 rotten kids, Lisa was too nice to do this, just started screaming, ah, until she stopped, which happened usually within about 5 minutes. My mother had an uncanny ability to immediately flash her so-called Hollywood smile despite any surrounding chaos and misery, just in an instant, this smile. And you'll see that on all her pictures today. It's literally every single picture. My mother did not pass that on to me. I cannot smile for the camera, so I make the little awkward grin. Can't really do it. She loved to travel around the world and learn about new cultures and new types of food, including in her 70s, she went to Scotland and ate haggis, which is essentially sheep stomach filled with lung chunks. She's like, yeah, I'm there, I gotta try it. My mother loved being a teacher early in her life and especially enjoyed changing the curriculum to meet each student's individual skill level. My mother's children, however, hated when she acted like a teacher at home. Even into her 80s, she would correct our grammar, her grandkids' grammar, the waiter's grammar, random passerby's grammar. She did not hesitate to make sure people were speaking the Queen's English correctly. One of my favorite childhood memories was when Randy or Lisa gave Mom an assignment to look at before they turned it in. Not such a good idea. There'd be so many corrections on there, there was more red ink than black by the time she was done. My sisters hated this. I remember them leaving the room crying. I have to admit, I thought it was pretty funny. And I still do. Thankfully, I learned from all those mistakes, and I never ever gave her a single piece of homework to look at. My mother was a master of diffusing uncomfortable situations with redirection, distraction, and humor. She was a psych major, after all. For example, my older sister Randy used to pick on her incredibly non-bratty, wonderful, never-his-fault little brother for no reason at all. And if I complained to Mom that Randy was the devil and I can prove it because she has 3 6s on her head, my mom would very calmly reply, first of all, I've never counted more than 2. Second of all, she would immediately do the Phyllis pivot and say, have you noticed how big the squirrels are this year? She would just, if you were one of the kids was dissing the other kids, it was instantly some other conversation she'd throw in there. My mother was really, really generous. She literally gave to every single charity that sent her an envelope. My mother was a really crappy bookkeeper because, especially in the later years, they figured that out, and every 2 weeks it'd be the same charities sending requests again, and until we took over the mail, when she started getting some dementia, we put a stop to that. My mother was a really, really good mom, despite the Attila stuff. So when you were sick, she'd stay at home with you, make you hot lemonade and cinnamon toast, and let you watch Love American Style in her bedroom. When you were slightly less sick, she'd quickly send you back to the monotonous grind of the 3rd grade. No freeloaders in this house. When you were 16, you were forced to get a job. She stated you would still have food and clothing paid for, of course, but money for movies, video games, hanging out with friends, ice cream, underage beer consumption, that's your responsibility. My mother was a very reasonable disciplinarian. Gary might remember this one. When my friend Kevin and I came back from the beach one day in high school, sober, and like really sober, he was driving his mother's fancy Saab 900 convertible and wanted to show me how great the brakes were. So he pulls up into the driveway, speeds up a little bit, gets really close to the garage door, and slams on the clutch. Didn't stop the car. So went right through the garage door and made the outline of a Saab, rear windows and all, like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon, through the garage and hit the side of the house, or hit the wall inside the house. And so we're obviously in panic mode. We're like, holy crap. So we go into the kitchen table. She was out. We knew she's coming home soon. And we just waited for whatever the hell she's going to do to us. And she walks in the kitchen and just her usual cheery Phyllis voice, hey. It's like, so like, okay. And then she goes to the sink. And then it changed. She saw in the sink there were a couple of forks in there, dirty forks that weren't put in the dishwasher. And we had glasses on her beloved butcher block table without coasters, making low water marks. And she did not like that. So she started yelling at us about the mess we left and not mentioning anything about the garage. So we were a little curious, and I remember well saying, did you notice the garage door on the way in here? She's like, yeah. I said, all right, if that didn't bother you, a couple of forks in the sink bother you? And she said, without missing a beat, whatever happened to the garage door was obviously an accident. Whoever did it will be responsible and take care of it financially, but leaving this mess in my kitchen is a blatant disregard for my personal property. That won't be tolerated. That is a true story. As the kids say these days, valid, I get it. My mother had a very challenging life, as Rabbi Bruce mentioned. She lost her best friend and husband, Barry, at the age of 49, her daughter, Lisa, at the age of 49. So needless to say, when we passed that, she's pretty excited. But she had a very wonderful and very full life, and she was the first to acknowledge it. She married her soulmate, and together they had many years sharing their passions, including international travel and art collecting. And whenever she spoke of my father, even a few months ago to me, she would comment on how well he treated her and how lucky she was to have him. She had so many good friends over the years, including Fern and Al, who she knew since grammar school, and she actually set them up. Her friend who moved to Costa Rica that she would visit every year in Costa Rica, even into her 80s, and most recently, Shelley, who was her neighbor in Northbrook at the Cotswolds, and then her best friend at the Sedgebrook. She had a large, close, supportive, extended family who was always quick to be here for any occasion, whether happy occasions or these kind. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give some special props to some of my mom's favorites. If you're not on this list, it didn't mean she didn't like you. Mr. Mensch, probably the top of the list, cousin Marty. When my father passed away when I was 13, out of all the people, she chose you to look after me if something happened to her. So you're on the clock now. And Marty's wife, Merle, You are now officially the family matriarch, so long live the Queen. Son-in-law turned son Steve, who lost his own parents very young, but quickly bonded so strongly with his new mom, he wasn't allowed to call her Phyllis either, and especially after Lisa died. So Steve, she really appreciated your sense of humor, your sense of family. She said you were the best holiday hog ever. And she told me that if anything happened to her, you would be the new family matriarch of the Chicago branch only. And it is 2024, you can be a matriarch now. So thank you for all your help on this funeral stuff, since you do this all the time. Love you. She adored her firstborn, my sister Randy, laughing with her quirky sense of humor and adventurous, possibly excessive, mischievous spirit. It's just a few years ago that Randy actually put Mom in a wheelchair that she did not need and pushed her around the big annual candy convention in McCormick Place for no other reason than they can pile bags of candy samples that they weren't supposed to take on it and then put it under her clothes and everything and sneak that out. Mom would actually give me all of her candy when she came home because she liked me more. After some high school reckless behavior of some sort, I can't even remember what, I recall Mom telling Randy that she hoped someday she would have a daughter just like her so she'd be tormented too. Unfortunately, Randy got Michelle, who was a goody two-shoes and didn't do anything bad. These are your mom's words, not mine. And of course, Mom loved Karen, though probably not at first sight like I did. Let's just say it's not an easy task marrying the only son of a Jewish mother, especially when you're a blonde Connecticut wasp. You're kind of behind the eight ball from the start. But my mother, as I mentioned earlier, was a bit of an intimidating figure. Karen stood her ground against the scary Mama Grizzly, and it wasn't long until these two very loving, intelligent, Northwestern grads with psych majors and teaching careers, Freudian, huh? With their book club books, they were sharing their book club books, crossword puzzles, and developed a great relationship. But Karen, she really loved, appreciated, and respected you almost as much as I do. So, there's 13 pages of this, but the font is huge. Looking back at my mother, she really was lucky. She had amazingly good health with few medical problems until her 80s and she passed away comfortably in her sleep at 90. My most endearing memory of my mom will always be her, as Bruce pointed out, her unparalleled zest for life. She was so excited to read every new book, see every new movie or play, go to the concerts at Ravinia, go to a bridge tournament. She just liked doing things and was seldom not doing things. After my kids were born, we'd get together with Grandma every Sunday night for dinner and drive into the city for unusual ethnic restaurants. And every time we approached the city's skyline, she'd do the Hollywood smile and make great comments about, oh my God, this is so gorgeous, like seeing it for the first time. Every spring, she went to the Botanic Gardens and light up with the new beautiful spring or fall colors, just like it was seeing it the first time. So in conclusion, yes, I'm almost there. My mother loved life, regular, everyday life. She appreciated the people, the places, the beauty all around her, and she never, ever took that for granted. And because of that, she really did have a wonderful life. So thank you all for being part of it. That's all I got. Mic drop.
So Phyllis and I shared a truly special and unique bond. Our relationship was forged during countless hours in hospital waiting rooms where we talked, played cards, and fervently prayed for good news from any one of Lisa's surgeries. I was the emotional one, bawling every time we received news from the doctor, whether it was good or bad. Yet Phyllis always remained stoic. I once asked her, "Ma, why don't you show emotion when it comes to news about your daughter?" She told me that during Barry's illness, a friend had advised her to remain strong and not display any emotion in front of him so that he would also be strong. I said to her, "Ma, that's dumb." And of course, I continued crying. But that's what made our bond so strong, our mutual lack of a filter. If Phyllis didn't like your hair, she would tell you. If she believed her way was the best way, which she always did, she would let you know. We didn't hold back from being brutally honest with each other, and that honesty strengthened our connection. We could say anything to each other, even argue fiercely, yet we always found a way to set aside our differences and come together. Phyllis was a powerhouse, and I had that before you mentioned powerhouse, during our holiday dinners, especially at Passover, where she joined us in the kitchen, made gefilte fish, matzo balls, and her renowned Passover bagels. The bond she formed with my kids during this time was beautiful and eternal. This year marked the first Passover Seder without Mom, without Phyllis, and her absence was felt deeply. Ma, we miss you more now than ever. When you see Lisa, go ahead and emote and tell her that you love her. And Lisa, when you see your mom, please be nice to her. To all of the grandkids, Michelle, Mark, Josh, Ben, Emma, Harry, and of course, Madeline and Allison, know that you were blessed to have Grandma Phyllis in your lives for so many years. She cherished every moment she spent with you and was the epitome of a grandmother who unconditionally loved all of her grandchildren. May Phyllis's soul be elevated by the presence of everyone here today, and may her memory continue to be a blessing for us all.
Oh my God, there's a lot of people here. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm very nervous. Oh God. Okay. So I'm Madeline, one of Grandma's granddaughters. Wow, I really didn't think. Okay, I'll just keep going. So I had a lot of things to say. It was really hard for me. I'll go closer. I'll do this. It was really hard for me to pare it back, but I figured I would start with Grandma's own words. It's not sad. These were from a voicemail from October 16th, 2014. Sorry. Okay, I need to say it like her, so I actually need to relax. Hi, this is your grandma, who's known you all your life. I changed your diaper, I babysat you, and I even took you to China. Call me back. I have 10 years of voicemail saved. I saved the good ones. Some are great, some are peppered through this speech. But if you ever want to hear, I have plenty more like that. She obviously did more than that. She taught us how to make matzo balls and Passover bagels. She would tell me to beat eggs for an extra 2 seconds, or don't press too hard for the matzo balls. Even when she wouldn't touch them, she would always tell me what to do from the sidelines. She taught my sister and I both how to drive when my dad was too impatient to do so, in her cute little Jaguar. Like everyone has said, she was cultured, she loved art and travel. She taught me not to be scared of things like lychees and other random things. And of course, as she had mentioned in her voicemail, we had our infamous China trip as my bat mitzvah gift. And frankly, it was just a miracle that a 74-year-old and a 13-year-old made it home alive after 2 weeks alone in China. So we'll call it a win. One of our biggest similarities, there are a lot. We went to Madison, we were psych majors, we liked a lot of the same things, crosswords. But one of the biggest similarities is that I am a doctor. And of course, we know that Grandma would have been a doctor, but her dad said girls shouldn't be too smart. I'm sure most of us in the room have heard that one. But of course, she was very smart, too much for her own good. Evidenced, like Uncle Johnny said, by her correcting everybody's grammar, yelling just, "I'm a Mensa," in response to everything, even if it was not relevant to what was going on. She would also fill out crosswords, even when her arthritis was bad, so she couldn't read what it said, but she knew it was right regardless. Okay, I'm better. When I was in medical school, I obviously was back in Chicago, and we would religiously go to dinner every week. Sometimes we had other guests, but usually it was just us. We would call each other multiple times a week, sometimes like 3, 4, 5 times, hence some of my great voicemails. At one point, I think I didn't call her back for like 2 days, and she left me a voicemail threatening to sell me to another grandma. I have that one saved as well. She was the reason we're so close to our St. Louis family, many of whom are here today. She loved you guys, Aunt Phyllis. This is where I lost it before. It's because of her that Grant and I were, oh God, I can't look at you, were welcomed so warmly when we moved there. She was so happy that I had family there. She would always say that when we talked about living there and how excited she was that we were seeing our cousins. She was not happy that we were leaving. She kind of selectively forgot that for the few months before we left, so I'd have to keep reminding her. As mentioned, one of my favorite things, whether you liked it or not, was how honest she was. It didn't go well for a few of those early teen years between the two of us, but other than that, it went fine. And she took it as well as she gave it. So whenever I would say something back to one of her quips, she would just smile and laugh. She didn't care. I think she kind of liked when people would push back a little bit. Because of her honesty, she was actually the first person that I told when I started dating Grant. I don't think I've told many people that. But I knew she would not tell anyone if I asked her not to, which she didn't. And I also knew she would be honest with me, which she did. In another voicemail, she said after dinner, "He's such a good guy. Good for you." So yes, she loves all of us a lot. She made sure to tell us. We will all miss her dearly. I know like multiple people have said already, I don't think any of us have really thought of a world without her. We just thought she would be here forever. So it will be a big change. Like we have mentioned, she was fierce, strong, very funny, but typically not on purpose. My world will be emptier without her in it, mostly because I just have no idea who I'm going to call now. But she wouldn't want that to last for long. She didn't like being sad. She's probably thrilled to be back with Barry and my mom Lisa and the rest of her family. And she is probably already bossing them around, and they are probably already rolling their eyes lovingly, just like we did.
Hello. It's often said that once we get a little bit older, we tend to repeat ourselves. Scientists are split on when this phenomenon usually begins to occur. Some say 70, 80, 85. In the case of Grandma Phyllis, if reports are to be believed, this began around 15 years old. The explanation for this is very simple. Grandma Phyllis knew quite a lot. She wanted you to hear what she knew, and she wanted you to hear it more than once. So, maybe us little people will get it. So, for our speech, Emma and I will speak through a handful of Grandma-isms, as we call them. For me, perhaps some of the highlights are hers related to food. No judgment on whatever you may have eaten last night, but there's a very high chance it was not dinner, because unless there is a green vegetable and a dessert, it is not dinner. Perhaps there's a lesson behind this. Perhaps, take care of yourself a little bit. Why not have a little bit of something sweet? Also, another great Grandma-ism. I did receive some colorful voicemails from Grandma Phyllis over the years, but the most common I received was, "Hi, it's your grandma. Call me." Some people would give, a little bit of context. What is she calling about? But the truth is, you don't need so much context to give someone a call. So, yeah.
Okay. I also have a few Grandma-isms, but I will try to keep it as short as possible. So the first thing Grandma would always say when she came over was, "So, what's going on new with you guys?" Although later in life, when she would ask, it would be a few times a visit. And basically every time I would tell her about my classes, which usually went like, "Oh, I'm taking this math class. I'm really enjoying it, but I'm a little worried. I have a test coming up, and the class has been pretty hard and there's so much homework, so I'm a little stressed. And every time I was stressed, and every time Grandma would respond in a variant of, well, I know you're gonna do amazing, you're a smart girl. It was really easy to say, yeah, that's true, because in the past, when I had countered with, I can be smart, but that doesn't mean that I'm gonna do well on this test, she would just tell me the same thing. I'm not worried about you, you're a smart girl. And I never fully appreciated how nice it was to have somebody who was so blindly confident in me and my ability to succeed. But I am gonna try to remember her in my head whenever I doubt myself now, because Grandma told me I'm a smart girl, and Grandma knows best. Now, another Grandma-ism that stuck with me was that she would only date guys with boats. She did this because she liked boats, and she didn't have one herself. And she even asked me if I did the same thing. Thank God Haley does have a boat, so it's okay. And I feel like there's a lesson to be learned there. Final honorable mention to a Grandma memory that wasn't a Grandma-ism per se, but it was very Grandma. We were having one of our Sunday dinners with Grandma, and for some reason we were talking about being trans and what that meant, and yeah. I didn't think Grandma was paying much attention. She was very focused on her eating, but she pipes in and goes, "Oh, I love Cousin Blair." For those of you who don't know, Cousin Blair is not trans. He's gay. Not exactly the same thing. But, it was very Grandma, and as funny as it was, she was doing what she always did, which was being unconditionally accepting even when she didn't fully understand.
So, as the resident college kid here, the two Grandma-isms that I'm going to take are those that apply to that. And she would remind us of these on a near daily basis, and I'm sure all of her grandchildren can relate to us on this. But she would often say, college is the best years of your life, and don't go to school too close to home. Unfortunately, my siblings and I all did an awful, horrible job on both of those fronts. Whether it was my brother who managed to escape Chicago, but forgot to look into the fact that his school was sort of stranded in the middle of the woods of New Hampshire, 2 hours away from the nearest city, and that city also being Boston. Or whether it's my sister who stayed in Chicago, just down the street from us, and however did manage to go to a school with a football team, very cool. Or it's me, who she would probably be the most disappointed in, because I stayed within the confines of Chicago, and the only party I've ever been to had pizza and soda and was hosted by my college English teacher. He was a very nice man, though. I had a good time. But while we were applying to college, and even when we began college, she would make it very clear where she stood on all of these issues. And when I eventually told her that I planned to go to school in Chicago, she was very accepting, and she always said, "Good for you." But she would also always make it a little bit clear with her facial expressions that there was a bit of disappointment behind there. But no matter how many times she would remind us about all of this, we would all laugh it off and say, silly Grandma, like, it's too late now anyways, there's nothing we can really do about it. But as it turns out, it's not really too late. And I'm not saying that the Citow clan needs to go back and redo college, even though many of us probably haven't had the most exciting college experiences. But when Grandma would give us these Grandma-isms every single day, she wasn't really trying to just tell us that we need to be very careful about where we go to college. She was trying to tell us that the Citows need to do a bit of a better job not taking ourselves too seriously. That we need to do a better job of finding joy in every day, finding joy in every moment. And not to steal Bruce's words on this one, but she had a very, very, very big zest for life. And that's something that we could all learn from. She definitely handed down a wonderful amount of discipline to my dad. And he handed down perhaps an even more wonderful or just more bountiful and less wonderful amount of that discipline onto us. And I think Grandma saw that and did whatever that she could in her most well-intentioned ways possible to swing the pendulum the other direction and try and make sure that we would never forget that it's important, that we enjoy every moment of our lives.
Honorable mention, because my dad asked me to say this. Yes, she went to Madison, but she only went for 2 years, and then she went to Northwestern. Thank you.
that the memories here that have been shared are such a mixture of tears and laughter. My hope for people is not so much that they find happiness in life, which Phyllis did, but that they experience joy, which is an understanding that life can be bitter and life can be sweet, and you have to decide how you're going to spice yours. Sleep well, Phyllis. You deserve it. For the spice of life you gave to your family and this world, you will be missed. You are loved. Amen. In the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember her. So long as we live, she too shall live, for she is now a part of all of us as we remember her. If you are able, I ask that you please rise. El Melei Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah, Im Kedoshim Utoharim Kezohar HaKiyamaziri. Et nishmat Parl bat Sarah v'velvel shelcha le'olama ba'al halachamim yasireha b'seiter k'nefav le'olamim v'tzror b'tzror ha'chaim et nishmata. Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava. V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved Phyllis who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance, may she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated.
This concludes the service here in our chapel. The interment will take place immediately at the family's plots at West Lawn Cemetery, 7801 West Montrose in Norwich. Following the interment today, the family will begin sitting at the Citow residence at 81 Lakewood. There is an error on the service folder. It says Longwood. Below that, it has the correct Lakewood street name under the parking instructions, so I apologize for that. Now, they will be sitting today from 5 until 9. There'll be a minion service at 7 p.m. Also, please take note in the service folder, the family has asked that memorial contributions be made to the Cancer Research Institute and or ORT America. That information's on the folder. For those of you watching the service online, that information's on the website you're currently on. For those of you joining with the family and going in procession today, the procession will form in our parking lot. Please make sure you have an orange funeral safety sticker. That sticker should be placed in the front passenger side of your windshield. We would also ask that you please have your bright headlights and flashing hazard lights on at all times. For an additional measure of safety, we will be placing magnetic flags on the tops of the vehicles in the procession, and we have a car in front, obviously the hearse, and I'll be in the last car. We'll keep everybody together. As we drive today, please drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you at all times. We want to avoid having any large spaces or gaps in the procession, particularly as we pass through intersections. Serving as pallbearers today will be Phyllis's grandchildren. If I could ask them to please rise and approach. And I'll ask everyone else to please rise as the deceased and her family and rabbi are escorted from the chapel. Thank you.